Florida for several gigs over the years. And the last time, it might not have been the last time, but several years back, I opened for Julius LaRosa. And did a tour, a 2-week tour opening for Julius LaRosa. And I kept meeting people. They go, "Oh, we've heard of you, we've heard of you." And it's like, you haven't heard of me. You've heard of Leonard Bernstein and Ira Gershwin, and you're splicing the two people together. And invariably, the people would go, "Oh yeah, it's this guy." Anyway, so it's nice to be back, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to my parents and my 4-year-old daughter. So if you hear a young voice acting up, it's my fault. Okay, we're going to get started with the fiddle tune that comes from right around where Riley is from. And it's a tune that comes from one of Riley's mentors, Mr. Thomas Jefferson Jarrell, great Brown Pete style fiddler from down here in North Carolina. And it's called "Breaking Up Christmas." If you look at Riley, just right and smile at him, maybe he'll sing it. But you gotta look right. Breaking Up Christmas. little bit north of central North Carolina there, going to Kentucky. Play a Kentucky fiddle tune for you. I learned it from a gentleman named Mr. Bruce Green, who lives pretty close to where I do in North Carolina. But, throughout the 70s, he collected from a lot of Kentucky musicians in particular. And so even though I got this from Bruce Green, it's a Kentucky who lives in North Carolina, like I said. It's a Kentucky fiddle tune. And he credits it to a couple different of the older musicians. Bruce is usually somebody who is very precise and exact, and when he plays tunes, it's somebody's exact version. He tries to keep himself out of it. He really just gives exactly what he collected. And this is one of the rare cases where he's done his own thing and put together this version with two different musicians. And this is 5 Miles of Ellenwood from Mr. Bruce Green. There's dancing that goes along with a lot of this music, and lots of the music in the Southern Appalachians is indeed dance music, and I'm sure we're all familiar with square dancing, sort of the social form, community social form of dancing, but there's also in that Southern Appalachian style of step dancing, and there are traditional styles of Appalachian clogging. There are some not so traditional styles these days. Clogging has developed very interesting ways in the past 20-25 years. But the style that I do is a solo form, an old traditional style that is improvised, strictly improvised. It's called flat-footing or flat-footed style clogging. And as modern clogging continues just to change drastically, a lot of the people who do the older flat-footed style clogging just call it flat-footing. We sort of disassociate from the word clogging because of the connotations it has these days. So what I'm going to do for you is flat-footing, or the old flat-footed style. Like I said, it's totally improvised, which it's good. When you don't have a good memory for routines, it's nice to do a dance form where you just make it up as you go along. And Riley will play a couple banjo tunes, and if he's nice enough, he'll tell me what they are.
Well, I might do it.
If he's nice enough.
I'm going to make it up as I go along too. How about that? Now I'm going to play you a couple of tunes. The first tune I'm going to play, I think, will be John Henry, which is a great old American folk tune about a great American folk hero named John Henry. And the second tune I'm going to play, I think I'll play Old Bunch of Keys, which is a tune that comes from the southern Appalachian Mountains, pretty much about an old bunch of keys. So there you go. Give it to me.
Thank you. Well, we're fortunate, I believe so anyway, in this country that we have two main styles of step dancing that we consider American step dancing. The Appalachian traditions, whether it's more modern clogging or the flat footing or some of the other traditions that are considered Appalachian clogging, or tap dancing. Tap dancing is another American category of step dancing, you know. You just can't call either of them a dance because there are so many different styles of tap, so many different styles of clogging. And the style of tap that I do is considered rhythm tap. It's similar to the flat footing, where the modern clogging has gotten very flashy and visually showy, and the old style that I prefer is really, it's just a relaxed form where it's the rhythm is key and is the primary focus. Not that, you know, it doesn't look good, not that we don't want it to look good, but the choices in flat footing are made based on the sounds and the rhythm. Rhythm tap is similar. Rhythm tap dancers, you know, again, they like it to look good, but the focus is the sound, so it's a bit different from theatrical tap dancing. And so rather than having heroes like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, who were great dancers, my heroes were people like Chuck Green and Honey Coles and Steve Condos, who lived the latter part of his life in Florida. I think he was based in Hollywood, Florida, for the last part of his life. They were the old jazz tap dancers, the jazz hoofers. And we actually lost one of the few remaining ones just a couple weeks ago, Mr. LaVon Robinson, up in Philadelphia. Really, there are only a small handful left. Jimmy Slide is still kicking and sliding. But most of the old dancers that I'm thinking of have passed on. So I'm going to do some rhythm tap, and Riley's got a song called Country Blues for all of us.
as big as I am. I've been playing a whole lot of banjo so far. I'm going to take a little break from that because too much banjo can be a bad thing. There's some states where it's illegal to have two of them in the same room. Hopefully Florida's not one of those. I've only got one with me though. But I want to tell you a little bit about where I come from. I know none of y'all have guessed which one's the native New Yorker and which one's the native North Carolinian. I'm not going to reveal that. Although I am going to tell you that I do come from a place in the northern Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. My family's from Allegheny County, which is just way up in the Blue Ridge, and there are a bunch of churches up in those mountains. And most of them are Protestant churches, and actually most of them are Baptist, to tell you the truth. You got several different kinds. You got regular Baptists and old regular Baptists and primitive Baptists. And you got free will Baptists, which is a complete oxymoron. Don't believe it. Free will, yeah. But anyhow, my granny went to the regular Baptist church. My granny Bogus, her name was Elsie Birdie Waddell. And she was just the sweetest woman, and she loved me to death. And I want to tell you a whole lot about her because she's fairly responsible for making me the man that I am today. Actually, all of me, because she was an awesome cook. And when I was a little boy, we used to go up there every weekend. It was only about an hour from where we lived. My dad came down out of the mountain into the Piedmont of North Carolina to be able to get some work that wasn't trimming Christmas trees and milking cows. And so we'd go up there to visit them every weekend, and we'd go to church with them. Now, I got to tell you, in these regular Baptist churches, in these mountain Baptist churches, they don't allow musical instruments at all. The only musical instrument is a human voice. It's a completely a cappella singing tradition, which I think stems from the singing traditions in the Hebrides Mountains in Scotland, as many of those people came from there. But they still do that, and they still don't allow musical instruments. In 2008, if you came there with a guitar, they'd run you off, which means they'd make you go away. We have a few colloquial sayings I have to translate every once in a while. But anyhow, I'd wake up over there at my granny's house a lot of times on Sunday morning, and I'd be back there in one of them old soft beds that Granny had, and I'd be under 6 or 7 quilts that she laid over me sequentially throughout the night. And I wondered for years why she did that. And it was because I was her grandbaby. And she loved me. And she didn't want me to get cold in the middle of the night in July. And so when I'd wake up in the morning in a sweat and gasping for air, I'd try and wiggle my way out of them quilts because they were handy, I'll tell you. Handmade, she made every stitch. She'd be in the kitchen and she'd be rattling pots and pans, cooking that breakfast. She'd be frying up all kinds of stuff and baking biscuits in the oven, and that coffee was cooking and you could smell all of it. You know, it just smelled so good. It was just wafting through the house. I'd wake up back there and I'd hear her in the kitchen, and she'd be singing some of them old songs that they were going to sing at church. She'd be getting herself all psyched up and ready to go to church because that was her social meeting for the week. That's where she got to see all her friends too, you see. So she'd be in there singing them old songs. I remember laying in there under all them quilts, just listening to her sing. She was singing in this high-pitched old woman voice that she had. And I remember laying in there under all them quilts thinking just how awful it did sound. But then as I got older, I started realizing how good it sounded. What a great opportunity I had to learn something. And I'd give anything to be able to hear my granny sing some of them songs now. She's passed and gone. And that's the song that I'm going to sing you now. It's called "The Day Is Past and Gone." And it's one that we used to sing in church. And I went to a primitive Baptist church up in the mountains in southwestern Virginia with a friend of mine here just a few weeks ago. So they only have church in those churches once a week. You only have meeting once a week. Or actually once a month, I'm sorry. So they would, you only get together on like the third Sunday or the fourth Sunday or the second Sunday. So you're not inundated with it. You get to go and enjoy it, and then you can go on about your business. It's kind of nice that way. We like that. But I'm going to sing you this song. It's called "The Day Is Past and Gone." The night of death draws near. We lay our garments by upon our beds. We rest, for death will soon disrobe us all of what we here possess. Lord, keep us safe this night, secure from all our fears. May angels guard us while we sleep, till morning light appears.
Well, the step dancing we have in America, be it tap dancing or the various styles of Appalachian clogging, are here because immigrant forms of step dancing were imported to America with various immigrant groups, most notably Anglo and Celtic immigrants brought their clogging and step dancing to America with them, and the different Anglo and Celtic styles mixed with each other here on American soil. Then they were mixed with a heavy dose of African, Black African, and African American movement and musicality. And it was this mixing together of these various traditions that formed the roots of the American traditions, which then developed here on American soil as American traditions. So I'd like to pay tribute now to one of the parental styles that went into our American traditions. And in particular, I'd like to do a Durham-style hornpipe, which is one example of English clogging. It's the same thing over there. English clogging really represents a lot of different English step dancing traditions. And so I have for you a Durham hornpipe, which is a clog dance to the rhythm of a hornpipe from the county of Durham. It's one of the northern counties. People, sometimes if they don't know much, but they've heard of some English clogging, they might think of the Lancashire clog or the Lancashire hornpipe. Well, this is very similar, but it's an adjacent county, so the style is just a little bit different. And the English clog dances are indeed done in wooden-soled clogs. Interestingly enough, though American clogging is called clogging, it was never done in wooden clogs. But the story goes that we took the name clogging, or the term clogging, because the English actually do use clogs and called their step dancing clog dancing. And so we took it from that, even though we never used clogs. And the use of English clogs goes back to their Industrial Revolution, simply because under the conditions of the industrialized north of England, which included sharp cobblestone-laid streets and factory floors, they needed a sturdy form of footwear. So they took the idea of a wooden-soled shoe from the French, they took the idea from the French sabot, and they developed an English-style clog. And second to having a hard wood-soled shoe, they then could start making sounds on their factory floors. And the development of English clogging has a lot to do with the industrialization of England. And the Durham hornpipe in particular developed as a raised pedestal dance. And the pedestals sometimes were only about 2 feet by 2 feet wide. Sometimes they were yay high or even higher. So the dance developed where you presented the steps right on the spot. You didn't move around. Otherwise you would lose the contest and hurt yourself in the process. The steps were done twice, right side and left side, and what that really translates to is good side, bad side. You couldn't fake it to be a one-sided dancer. The sounds had to be even. To judge this, sometimes a judge would be put underneath the pedestal or underneath the stage. And posture had to be nice and straight, not tightly held like modern Irish competition step dancing, but upright posture but still loose and relaxed. And then also the complexity of the steps were created. So what I have for you here is a Durham-style hornpipe. I certainly hope you like it. And if you don't, I certainly hope you'll just keep that to yourself.
Finished faster than I thought he was going to. And I was eating a mouthful of nuts. So y'all excuse me while I swallow. Almost. One more time. Okay, now. years up in the area of North Carolina known as the foothills around Mount Airy, Surrey County, North Carolina. There were a lot of great old-time musicians there. I spent a whole lot of time with one named Tommy Gerald. Tommy was a brilliant old man. He was in his 80s when I met him. And he, it was just like, you go to his house and he welcomed you in. You were part of his family. If you were interested in what he had to offer you, which was great music, great stories, fellowship, and outstanding food. If you were interested in those things and you were interested in him, you were part of his family. So we would go there frequently. And in fact, Tommy's house was on the way to my grandmother's house. A great friend of mine I used to travel up there with a lot of times named Kirk Sutphin. He's a great fiddler, and he learned from Tommy as well. But we would tell our parents that we were going up to my grandma's house to mow her yard and bring in some firewood for her. And of course, on the way, we would have to stop at Tommy's and play tunes for a while. And then we go up to my granny's and split firewood and mow the yard and bring in the wood and draw up some water and things like that. People still do live like that, you know, where they have to draw water out of the well and they cook with firewood and things like that. But we do that, and then Granny would feed us, and then we'd be off back down the road, and we'd stop at Tommy's on the way home. Because the music was kind of the important thing to us. You know, we were really enjoying it. It was a lot of fun. But Tommy used to talk about this old fella he played with. His name was Fred Cochran. Now Fred was, there are lots of recordings of him, and he's one of my favorite banjo players. I never got to meet him. He passed away just before I started getting into the area. But Fred was known in the community as one of those characters. You know, every community has its characters. Well, Fred was a professional musician. He was one of the only guys from around that area that actually made his living as a musician. And he did well. He provided for his family. He raised 2 children. He kept his wife very well. They had a nice little house up in Low Gap, North Carolina. I know that's y'all's next vacation destination. I hear there's roads that go up there. But anyhow, Fred was also known in the community as let's see, how can we say it? A nice way to say it is he liked to consume the local liquid folk art, if you will. Now, if you know about the southern Appalachian Mountains, lots of those Scots-Irish people, see, they were Scottish originally, and then they went to Ireland. And of course, Scotland and Ireland are both known for their whiskeys. But when they got to North America, well, people were still wanting to tax them for it. And they just didn't like paying tax too much. I don't know any of us that like to pay tax too much. The IRS is after me right now, I believe. I'll find out when I get home. But they hid back down in those mountains, and they started making moonshine whiskey, they called it, because they'd make it at night in the darkness when nobody could see them. Well, of course, that's untaxed corn liquor, and we like to call that the local liquid folk art. So Fred was a copious consumer of said local liquid folk art, and that local liquid folk art will make one believe things to be true that aren't necessarily true. You see, actually, the consumption of that liquid folk art, just having it there, is not going to make you believe anything's not true. But Fred liked to ingest it, so he imbibed regularly. Well, one of the things that he believed to be true is that he wrote this song that I'm about to play, and it's just a derivative of a great old Southern Appalachian song called Reuben, but he called it Long Steel Rail, and he changed some of the verses in it, but there's still floating verses that appear in several of the tunes from the tunes and songs from the Southern Appalachians. But it's in an obscure banjo tune. This bass string right here is really low. It's tuned down a whole 8 notes from that one, so it's the same note, it's just 8 notes lower, or 8 pitches lower. y'all enjoy it. It's about a feller whose girl has done him wrong, and he's mad about it. But he's going to carry on in the face of adversity, and he's going to continue his life down that long steel rail.
Finish this half of the program with this next number. We're actually, well, I can't speak for I'm going to come out. It's, half of my hometown is here. And I wasn't raised locally. I'm talking about half of Malvern, New York is here. Right, it's one of 12 Malverns. This is a story I always heard growing up. There are 12 Malverns in the world, but Malvern, Long Island is the only one with an E at the end. And the continuation of that story that I heard is that it wasn't meant to have that E. But at one point in Malvern's history, it had a new railroad sign painted. And the sign painter added an E. And rather than pay to have the sign redone, Malvern just lowered the E. So, yeah, you know how it goes. It's tough. Times are always tough, I guess. So I'll come out into the lobby and just to let you know, we have a CD, an Appalachian Roots CD, which is available. I think it's out in the lobby. And I've also got, if you want to learn how to do some of this dancing, I've got an instructional DVD that is out there. It's specifically the flat footing, the Appalachian flat footing. It's not a tap video or an English blog. It's the flat footing, so if you want to try your luck with it. It's, as people like to say, clog, don't jog. You don't have to walk back. So it's good exercise for you. And
look what it's done for me.
Ronnie's a good clogger, and he might even do a dance step for you in the next half.
You can't ever tell.
When you do it, I can tell, Ryan.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And What else? Oh yeah, and I also have a concert video, not of this concert, but of another show that I do. So it's also out in the lobby as a DVD. So we're going to finish up with our version of a good old time song. It's a typical bad band song in the Southern Appalachians. A good portion, perhaps most of the bad band songs in the Southern Appalachians are either about murders or killings. And take your pick. And this is one of those. It's Wild Bill Jones, our version, just the voice and the feet. It's starting to be like it. So we'll take a break after this. Hopefully we'll see you either out in the lobby or back here in 15 or 20 minutes. I'm not sure how long we keep it. First, Wild Bill Jones.
Went out one day for a take a little walk. I walked on a Wild Bill Jones. Walking and talking with a girlfriend of mine. Begged him to leave her alone. Straight down and passed around a long steel bottle. Hell, that drank on me. Today was the end of a Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow be the end of me. He says my age is 21 years. I'm too old to be controlled. So I pulled my revolver from my side, destroyed that poor boy's soul. Boys take down and pass round a long neck bottle. Hell, I drank on me. Today was the end of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow be the end of me. Well, jerk and he scrambled and he fell to the ground. He gave a dying moan. Then I threw my arms around my true lover's neck. Said, honey, won't you please come home? Boys take down and break down a long neck bottle. Hell, drink on me. Today was the end of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow be the end of me. Well, they put me in jail for 20 long years. Lord, how I long to be free. That day was the end of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow will be the end of me. Boys take down and pass round a long neck bottle. Oh, go on the spree. Today was the end of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow be the end of me. Oh, bring me a pillow for to lay down my head and a hammer to beat out my brains. For liquor has ruined my body, poor boy. Pretty women have run me rain. Oh, take down and pass round a long neck bottle. Hell, drank on me. Today was the end of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow be the end of me.
Back to. Okay.
Wait a minute. You know what I'm missing? No, that's good.
Banjo.
Yeah.
All right. Had to be one or the other. Okay, well, it was nice to talk to half of Melbourne out there. Okay, so how many people are from Long Island out there? How many people, okay, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. How many people were actually rooting for the Patriots? Sorry. Yeah. It's a good game though, right? I watched it this year. It was the first time I think it did more than 20 years that I watched a football game. I'm glad I did. It was a great game. I'm not really a big Giants fan. I was a Minnesota Vikings fan growing up. I liked the colors as a kid.
Yellow and purple.
Purple and gold. Yellow. Gold. The Vikings. Kid from Melbourne. And they always got so close, and they never quite went all the way. All right, well, We'll get started with the tune again, and this will be another Kentucky tune, but this one comes from the plight of Mr. Art Stamper. Art passed away about 4 years ago or so, and Art was great on a lot of levels. He was a great guy, he was just an amazing musician, and he was really one of the youngest old people I ever met, just sort of socially, politically. He had a great time hanging out with us and playing music and stuff. And Art was a really interesting man and musician because he was steeped in old-time music. He was raised in an old-time family, old-time music family. And his father was actually one of the musicians that Bruce Green collected from. He played a tune, I remember Bruce Green, and I mentioned he collected from Kentucky fiddlers. Well, Art's father, Ira Bernstein, was one of those musicians, Kentucky musicians that Bruce Green collected. So Art was raised with great old-time music that went back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. But he was around for the birth of bluegrass music, which really came out of old-time music. And bluegrass was a commercialization of old-time music that took elements from blues and other pop forms of music. And it really was very deliberately an attempt at making this stuff commercially viable. And Art was there for that, and he was one of the first bluegrass fiddlers. And as a matter of fact, I'm assuming these names might mean something to a few of you, at least. He is on a bunch of the early Stanley Brothers recordings, Ralph and Carter Stanley. That guy, he's on some of those early recordings where it simply says the Carter Brothers, the Carter family. What was that? The Stanley Brothers, here, Carter, yeah. The Stanley Brothers. But when you listen to the music, there's a full band on there, but nobody gets credit except Ralph and Carter Stanley. And Art is the fiddler on some of those recordings. He also toured, I'm not sure he recorded with the Monroe Brothers, with Bill and Charlie Monroe. And Bill Monroe, of course, is considered the father of bluegrass music. And so Art played with those bluegrass greats. He really was one of the founding, fiddlers of bluegrass music, but he came out of the old-time tradition. And towards the end of his life, he sort of was rediscovered by the old-time crowd. As a matter of fact, a couple of friends of ours saw him at a festival, and they saw his name, Art Stamper. They went up and they asked him, "Did you ever hear of a fiddler, or do you know of a fiddler, Hiram Stamper from Kentucky?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm Hiram's boy." And our friends Dirk Powell and John Herman, found him and said, "Well, do you know any of your dad's music? Do you still play that?" Because Art was at this festival playing bluegrass. And he said, "Yeah, I know all my father's tunes." And he had to kind of brush them off and rework them and kind of get old again with his musical style. And he loved it. He just had another career at the end of his life, getting back into old-time music. And so this tune that we have is one of his. And actually, I went to Art's funeral when he passed away. I guess that's a good thing. I mean, not that he passed away, but that the funeral was... It'd be really tough to go to his funeral if he didn't pass away. That's what I'm trying to say. But the thing is, I mean, I'm sure most of you can understand this. Bernstein, right? Where I come from, when you pass, you're in the ground within 24 hours. Well, Art Stamper, being from Kentucky, and the person he was, that's not his tradition. So I was there for the second of 2 funerals for Art, which was 5 days after the first one. Art had been partying all across the state of Kentucky that week. And so by the time I saw him, he wasn't looking that good. It was an open casket, and his grandkids were playing with his hat, shaking his hand. And that's pretty strange stuff for me. And people were playing music, and there was Art just at the head of the room, and everybody was saying their last goodbyes to Art and stuff. So anyway, Art was a great guy, and this is one of his tunes. It's called The Brushy Forks of John Street. We tune because you care.
If you don't care, you can tell us right now and it'll save a whole lot of time.
back to some dancing here, and we'll do a song that comes out of the old-time tradition. But this particular song actually crossed over and made it into popular culture in America because it was covered by the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead called this song "Going Down the Road Feeling Bad," which is one of the verses in the song. Most people who come out of the traditional scene would call it by a different title, "The Lonesome Road Blues." This is just a different verse in the song. But it's kind of interesting that the Grateful Dead would call it "Going Down the Road Feeling Bad," because as Riley once made the comment, he thought those guys usually went down the road feeling good. But this is our version of the Lonesome Road Blues.
I mentioned a bit about the history of American step dancing, the idea that tap dancing and the Appalachian clogging styles came from immigrant forms that were brought to the New World, brought to America, where and here they mixed together, and then were mixed with and greatly influenced by African and African-American traditions as well. But in Canada, there was also immigration from Ireland and England. And so because of that, English and Irish step dancing, or Scotch-Irish step dancing, went to Canada. But thankfully, there was not a history of African enslavement in Canada. So because of that, that particular influence is missing. So the Canadian step dance traditions, which are found in various regions around Canada today, have stayed much closer to the Anglo and Celtic roots because they weren't changed that much. So, and there are several different traditions. There are various maritime traditions in Canada. There's a Cape Breton style, there's a Nova Scotian style, or Newfoundland style, I should say. Further inland, a little bit in the province of Quebec, you find various regional styles of French-Canadian or Quebecois step dancing, and then even further west, you find different Ottawa Valley traditions of step dancing, and they all have remained much closer to the Anglo and Celtic roots because of the lack of African influence. And so I would like to do a French-Canadian waltz clog for you, and perhaps you'll see this, that this seems a little bit closer to that English clog dance I did. It is not so much down into the earth the way that the rhythm tap and the flat footing is. Now, this is sort of the folk club portion of the program. You guys get to sing. Now, I tested this out with my folks, and a sample, and actually not even with my folks, just with my mom. And a sample of one is not exactly a big sample, but I think this will work. So can we have the house lights up? There we go. So I've done this a lot in England. I haven't really done it here in the United States, but in England, it seems that as part of the British psyche, everyone knows, I think it's genetic, everyone knows the words to Bicycle Built for Two. So can I assume that we all, or a lot of us, know Bicycle Built for Two here in this country? And I also need to take a little poll here. I have always sung it, or I always sang it as Bicycle Built for Two. And in England, I was corrected repeatedly that bicycles are not built. Buildings are built. Bicycles are made. So they say bicycle made for two. Now that just seems, and hands down, 95% of the people over there would sing. And I've done this for a couple of years on tours over there. Bicycle made for two. But I just feel like we should sing bicycle built for two. Does that sound more right to you guys? Okay, so maybe it's, here, the American Revolution starts all again, right? So we will sing Bicycle Built for Two. Now, if you don't know the words to the song at the outset of this, by the time we get through 5 times through, I think we'll all have the words, right? Now, let's think about the task at hand here, ladies and gentlemen. You guys are going to be the music. You're going to be the band for me to do a waltz clog, a French-Canadian waltz clog here. So, what do you think is the most important sort of musical element for a step dancer? Do you think it's the pitch, the rhythm, timing, tempo? So I will count us all in, and it's our job, or your job, 1, to come in at the tempo that I count you into, and 2, stay at that tempo. Don't slow down, don't do any artistic flourishes, no slowing down at the end of the part for you know, again, emotional impact. Just keep it straight. I'm going to be trying to dance to you guys, so you have to help me out here, okay? So we're all going to sing Bicycle Built for Two 5 times through with gusto and steady tempo. And I'll do a French-Canadian waltz clog. And I'll have you know, there is a panel of judges. You can't see them, but there is a panel of judges. We have a Russian judge, we have a Canadian judge, we have an American judge, we have, I think, a Hungarian judge tonight as well. Or actually, maybe I should turn into, we have a Passaic, New Jersey judge, a Malvern, Long Island judge, you know, we'll keep it local. One Boca judge and a Delray judge. And on top of that, we have my daughter, so she's the ultimate judge. So 5 times through, I'll count us in, and if I have to stop to correct you guys, I will. We'll get this, okay. Are we ready? Okay, this is a test. Okay, so, Bicycle Built for Two. And you know what? Even though it's not the most important thing, pitch still is important. So let's pick a key, okay? Unfortunately, there's no real democratic way to do this, so I will simply start singing, and you guys get on my key, okay? I'm just going to put my foot down about this. So I'll give you tempo and key, okay? 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. Come on. I'm that crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. You will see, come on, let's see how I still will do. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm that crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you will see, come on, let's see how a bicycle will do. Again! Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm that crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you will see, come on, let's see how a bicycle will do. And then, Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm that crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you will see, come on, let's see how a bicycle will do. Last time with gusto! Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm that crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you will see, come on, let's see how a bicycle will do.
Any of you guys see 2001: A Space Odyssey the other night on AMC, American Movie Classics? Well, the HAL 9000 computer, that was the song he sang in the film, was Daisy, Daisy. And I have it on good authority that HAL sang Built for Two as well. So the Americans are once again right. There's a reason we got away from England. Well, talking about that movie brings me around to another movie that I want to talk about. I had a great privilege a few years ago, back in 2003, to perform a lot of the music in this film called Cold Mountain. Did any of you see Cold Mountain? Well, there's a gentleman in there who we shall say is gravitationally challenged. That means he's fat. But he's the banjo player, and his name is Pangle, and they couldn't find a coat big enough for him, and Ruby made him a coat. Now, when Pangle sings in this film, that's my voice coming out of his mouth.
Really?
Which is a pretty weird thing when it's your voice. If you go to the theater and you hear yourself singing but you don't see yourself, that's kind of weird. But anyhow, I had the opportunity to be Pangle's singing voice, and I played some banjo in that film as well. And it was just a huge privilege to be one of the only North Carolinians involved in making that film about 1860s North Carolina. Well, in fact, it was a huge privilege to be one of the only Americans involved in making that film. Because everybody was from England, Australia, or Ireland that worked on it, or Romania. All the soldiers you saw were all the extras you saw were pretty much Romanian soldiers. They were real Romanian soldiers. And they got them for about $10 a day, which is like about $300 a day here. And that's why they used them. And it was a big deal for them because they were making a lot of money compared to what they normally made. And everybody seemed to enjoy it. It was a good time. But I got to go to Nashville, Tennessee, and work on the soundtrack for the film. And I got to spend a lot of time with some of the actors, and I was trying to teach some of them how to talk like they were from North Carolina. I didn't do such a good job, apparently, because hardly any of them sounded like they were from North Carolina. The only person that sounded like she was from North Carolina was a woman that was from Virginia. So there you go. That's the way that works sometimes. But I got to spend a lot of time with the director, Anthony Minghella. Now, Anthony is a great film director. He's from the Isle of Wight in England, down off the south coast of England. And the reason he's such a great film director is because, well, he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to get the best art that you have in you out. He knows how to make you perform the best that you possibly can. And the way he does that is by saying nice things to you, and complimenting you, and making you feel like you're comfortable. Well, we'd go into the studio there every morning in Nashville when we were doing the soundtrack. And he'd say, you know, he'd be standing there and he'd have a big old smile on his face. He's about 5'5". And he'd look at me and he'd look up at me and he'd say things like, "Oh, Riley, you're perfect. Thank you so much for being part of my project." After about 2 days of that, I really started warming up to that little fella. I'll tell you what. Now, you can't make stuff up like this up. You know, this is true. And that's the thing. It's a true story. But we were getting ready to do this song that I'm going to play for you now called The Cuckoo Bird. Now, The Cuckoo Bird is an old song that comes from England. And it's prominent throughout the southern Appalachian Mountains. And I've been hearing it ever since I was a little feller. And yes, there was a time when I was little. Thank you very much. However, this tune is one we did in the film. And unfortunately, most of it got cut out of the film. All the singing got cut out of the film on this particular song, but it's still on the soundtrack. Now, Anthony looked up at me from his chair there that morning that we were about to do this. He says, "Riley, a bit of direction with the cuckoo bird. I was thinking, when you're singing, oh, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles when she flies." Right there, could you just say, coo, coo? Well, me being from North Carolina and everything like I am, it was at that particular juncture that I started trying to decide how I was going to tell Anthony Minghella no. And that's something that I'm still studying about because we did it. And when you hear the soundtrack of the film Cold Mountain and you hear that cuckoo on there, well, that cuckoo's me. And now I'm going to play you the song. I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles, and she flies, and she never says cuckoo till the 4th day of July. Jack
usually a single fiddle tradition, but there are lots of examples of double fiddle bands, twin fiddle bands. But when you do find two fiddles in old-time music, they're almost always playing the same melody. They're simply doubling up the melody line. The concept of harmony fiddling in old-time music is basically non-existent, at least not intentional harmony fiddling. But we're not beyond adding modern concepts to old-time music there, modern concepts of harmony there. So we're going to set a fiddle tune as a double fiddle, a harmony fiddle piece. And it's another Kentucky tune. This comes from the playing of Mr. John Morgan Salyer from McLaughlin County in Kentucky. And John Salyer was an interesting man. He played his music in the early part of the 19th century. He was around for the beginnings of the American recording industry. And I'm sure we're all familiar with some of the stories that are known, especially for some of the early blues musicians, where record companies would buy music. They might pay an artist 50 cents or 75 cents for a tune, a song, and that was it. And the record companies would then go on to make thousands of dollars, and the artist never made more than the original 50-cent buyout. And those stories were in the making back then. People didn't really know about that. It was first happening to them. But apparently the story goes that a record executive came down from New York or New Jersey and tracked down John Salyer at his house, and went to his house and approached Mr. Salyer and then talked to him for a while, and then made him an offer about recording. And John Salyer thought about it and said, well, that just doesn't sound fair. No, I won't agree to that. That just doesn't sound fair to me. And the record company executive figured, well, they all give in. I'll just chat them up a little bit more, and I'll just repeat myself in a few moments. So that's what happened. They talked for a little bit longer. The record company executive simply made the same offer. And John Salyer said again, that just doesn't seem very fair to me. And so the record company executive said something to the effect of, Mr. Salyer, without us, you'll never get your music out to the public. Mr. Salyer looked back at the man and said, excuse me, sir, without me, you'll never get my music out to the public. And John Salyer threw the man off his property, told him never to come back. John Salyer never recorded commercially, but he did go out and buy a home recording setup. I think it was homemade wax records, or they might have been cylinders, I'm not sure the exact form.
They were discs.
They were discs, yeah. And he recorded his music for his family. And his son Grover actually gave Mr. Bruce Green again, the collector who I mentioned earlier, access to these cylinder discs, or these discs, I should say, the wax discs. And because of that, people like Riley and myself and people who play this stuff actually have access to John Salyer's music. But he never made it onto Columbia or RCA or Sony. Right. So this is Trouble in Mind from Mr. John Salyer.